Right. Okay, let's get started. So it's episode 50, guys, and a very special episode. And I am joined by a very special guest. So been looking forward to that. This one's been in the diary for months because Grandmaster Ameris is so difficult to get a hold of. But yeah, we're joined by Grandmaster Ameris today, 9th degree black belt, AIMA technical director, and the most senior student of living legend, Grandmaster Cho. So thank you so much for joining us, sir. How are you?
Oh, great. Thank you for having me. I've been looking forward to it. Been watching all your podcasts and really, really great job, Master Belgasm. Very, very good.
Thank you, sir. Thank you. Lots of places we could start today, but I think if it's okay with you, I'd like to start on quite a poignant place. And if we can take a wee moment to remember and to talk about Father Connolly, if that would be okay with you.
Sure thing. Yeah. Father was actually, I started Taekwondo with Father Connolly. I was a black belt in Shorin-ryu. And I left Shorin-ryu and I went with Father Connolly in Taekwondo. Trained with Father, tested for my black belt in Taekwondo. So I actually started as a white belt in Taekwondo.
Yep.
And went all the way and tested for black belt with Father. And then I was real interested in competition. So Father was the one that recommended Grandmaster Cho because he knew of Grandmaster Cho's reputation and he knew of his his skill set and so forth. So he was the one who recommended it. And unfortunately, Father passed away a couple months ago. They just had a memorial on this past Saturday. I went up to his. Every year they do a summer camp in at the outskirts of Pittsburgh. And I've been going up for the last close to 40 years, teaching once a week. And his student, Master Misketch, Randy Misketch, is going to carry on his system of Sejong Taekwondo. And I know he'll do a phenomenal job. He's a great martial artist and a great person. And he was the one Father wanted to be his successor. So anything we could do, to assist him with that or to help him with that, we're on board.
Yep. I went back and actually watched. There's a wonderful documentary that one of your former students, Stephanie, made called Beyond the Belt. So anybody that's listening to the podcast, please check that out. And there was a lovely moment when Father Connolly was being interviewed. And I want to take you back to that, if possible, where he was describing how you weren't exactly a believer in Taekwondo or traditional martial arts when you first went to him. So do you remember back to those years?
Yeah, I mean, I started in 1969 in martial arts. And, back then it was completely different than what it is today. And there's pros and cons. A lot of people say, oh, the golden years, and they were golden years. But, there's great things today that weren't back then and so forth. But I was going to a Catholic high school and I was 14 years old. And that's right around the time like full contact karate was coming out. And my father was a professional boxer and I boxed and, we always had that contact. And a lot of times back then you weren't allowed to hit the face. And, it was a transition period in the martial arts. So I come into school one day and the principal says to me, Sister Regina Claire, who was a great lady, she says, go over to the rectory where Father Connolly lives. There's a priest that does what you do. And I said, a priest that does what I do? At 14, I was a little bit like, what's this priest? So I go over to them. Father told me that he did, Taekwondo, and he started teaching me Taekwondo. They met every Tuesday night at the church, and we just hit it off. But Father was a traditionalist, and when I say a traditionalist, I don't mean that in a negative way. But Father come from the era of the no contact to the face. If it was written in General Choi's book one way, that's the way Father did it. It was no altering from that. And Father also practiced Aikido. And there's a lot of value to every martial arts. But at that time in my life, immature, 14 years old, I didn't think there was too much value in Aikido. And me and Father would have these great debates, which he always won. But, and again, I was, if it wasn't real practical, if it wasn't, a fighting thing, I wasn't real interested at that time in my life. And I thank Father and, of course, Grandmaster Cho for introducing me what real martial arts was all about. And it's not all about the physical, but we all know the benefits that it has. with everything else and how it's a positive impact on our lives. But at that time, me and Father had some really, really good debates and good what do you call good discussions.
So I think it's a sign of the type of, and maybe you can tell us a wee bit about this story as well. It's a show of what a special man he was, but also a special martial arts instructor. That it's very rare that an instructor would facilitate their student moving on to someone the way that he introduced you to Grandmaster Cho. And a lot, that hardly, as far as I know, hardly ever happens, but he's seen something in you, I guess, that he could match with Grandmaster Cho. So how did that, and when did that transition happen?
Well, I think around 1977, 1978, Grandmaster Cho come out on Taekwondo Times. I think it was one of the first ones, or I'm sorry, Traditional Taekwondo magazine. And then there was Taekwondo Times. And the articles that he was coming out back then was like, revolutionary. He was incorporating boxing in there and, holding on to the traditional Taekwondo route, but really expanding on the physical and on the, the techniques and the training methods. And, he was just so far ahead of his time. Yep. And I think Father Connolly's seen that. And Father Connolly's seen, he saw how serious I was in training, that I wanted to make it a career, that I was laser focused, and the only thing I wanted to do was martial arts. The only thing I wanted to do was compete. And he knew he couldn't, with his philosophy and with he wasn't a full-time martial artist. He was a priest. He was trying to match me with someone that he thought, number one, would hold on to the traditional value of Taekwondo, while giving me the freedom and what I was looking for as far as competition, as far as, improving my techniques and training methods. Very, very, very seldom ever happens in the martial arts, now or then, that an instructor would say, look, I'm recommending you to go to, this instructor because he can offer you something I can't. The egos are huge, and, and it goes, I guess, across all sports. Everybody wants to take credit for, that, they feel that maybe even a sign of disloyalty. And Father Connolly, because he had my best interest at heart, sent me to Grandmaster Cho. And, that's a thing that I would always be indebted to, because that relationship is just, Grandmaster Cho is my Taekwondo father. he's yeah. How close we are over the years. He's just, I think the epitome of not only one of the greatest martial artists ever to live, but one of the greatest people that you could ever meet.
Yeah. The progression is something that I'd love to really, I think a lot of times people say, I've changed as a person or I've changed as a martial artist, but I'd love to dig a wee bit deeper with you, because at the beginning, I think it's safe to say that you might have seen yourself as a fighter. Mm-hmm. And now it goes without saying you're a complete martial artist. That journey's obviously been 30 or 40 years. So can you talk us through maybe some landmarks of what was the process?
Yeah, and again, I started martial arts when I was 7 years old. And at that time, it was completely different. There was very few kids in the class. There was hardly any women in training. Yep. And I had a hardcore instructor. He was a great instructor, and the Shorin-ryu system. And, it was hard training. It was something that, I don't think it would last today. It wouldn't be something a lot of people would do today, because and there wasn't a lot of things to do. So if you went into karate, or you went into baseball, you were a baseball player. You didn't mix too much. But at that time, you had to compete in tournaments. It wasn't like you had the option. Your instructor would put up a tournament on the wall, flyer for a tournament, and we would go Saturday to a tournament. We go to another tournament on Sunday. So from, I would say, about 8, 9 years old, through when I made black belt. I made black belt at 12 years old in Shorin-ryu. And then, even through into my teens, and when I met Grandmaster Cho, it was competition. And it was, just training for competition. And, that's where I was. And I think a lot of it has to do with your age, when you're young, you I don't know if you want to say you want to prove something to yourself, but you're young, it's different.
Yeah.
So, I competed a lot. I competed in a lot of, point fighting, and the point fighting back then, was completely different than the point fighting now. I mean, now the techniques in point fighting and the athleticism is unbelievable. I mean, I watch some of the point fighters today, and it's like, oh my God, I never was an athlete like that.
Yeah.
Back then, it was side kick, front kick, round kick, reverse punch, maybe a back fist, but it was bare knuckle, and it was you threw the everything that you threw was to really do damage to the opponent.
Yeah.
They said non-contact to the face, and again, depending on where you were fighting, you hit a guy in the face, you bowed, sorry, and then just keep going.
Yeah.
It was a completely different era. And I don't think it's fair to compare the fighters today or the point fighters today to the point fighters then, because it was so much different.
Mm-hmm.
The rules have changed. Again, the athleticism. Even if you look at the forms, or the yongs or katas or whatever style you call them. Today I really personally don't enjoy watching some of the acrobatics.
Yeah.
That is incorporated into that. But that's just my personal opinion. That's not saying that it's wrong or anything. I always refer to a story. Grandmaster Bong Soo-han, who was a Hapkido master, really good friends with Grandmaster Cho. And I was fortunate one time, we were up in New York. Wesley Snipes, the movie actor, I'm sure you remember.
Yes. Oh, yeah.
He had this big event with all these masters. He called it Masters of the Martial Arts. And a group that come up to do a demonstration, and they were phenomenal, and they were doing patterns, and they were flipping and jumping and doing all this. And I was sitting next to Grandmaster Cho and next to Grandmaster Han, and it was an impressive demonstration. And Grandmaster Han looked at Grandmaster Cho, and he said, "Just think how good they would be if they did martial arts." He said, "The gymnastics show." And again, I think it's because of the era that we all come up in.
Yeah.
Patterns were, and the way, if you ever watch Grandmaster Cho do it, a pattern was an imaginary opponent. So a block was a block to block an imaginary opponent. It wasn't something. So again, not criticizing, there's a place for everything.
Yeah.
But because of the era that we come up in, and because of the era that I come up in, certain things I favor more and certain things I don't. 1974 was the first PKA World Championships. We had Isaac Duenas from Mexico. Mm-hmm. Bill Wallace was the middleweight. Jeff Smith was the light heavyweight, and heavyweight was Joe Louis. They won the championships, and that was the birth of American kickboxing. Yeah. So that's the direction we were all going then. Even like now the point tournaments converted to full contact tournaments. Mm-hmm. You would go to a tournament, and it wouldn't be in a boxing ring. It would be just like a regular tournament, but it was full contact.
Okay.
And then you'd fight one guy, you fight the next guy, just like a regular tournament. And then it evolved to ring fights, when they put the boxing ring in, and now it started to go towards kickboxing. So, it went there. But in the interim of that, I've competed a little bit in the Kokushinkai, which I have a lot of respect for the Kokushinkai style of martial arts, which, Masoyama. I competed a couple of their tournaments, and they're extremely tough fighters. Throwing the leg kicks, which takes a whole new dimension, especially for Taekwondo people, because at that time we never threw a leg kick. I mean, we maybe threw a sweep or something like that. Yeah. But that's the evolution of it. And again, going back to Grandmaster Cho, I think. And Father Connolly seen this. He was open-minded enough to say, look, if you're going to compete in Kokushin, you need to know how to throw the leg kicks.
Yeah.
So let's learn the leg kicks. Let's adopt, let's build on what we have. I mean, one of the things that Grandmaster Cho, first thing he taught me was when I was fighting in either was a kickboxing fight that allowed leg kicks or a Kokushinkai fight, we called the knockdown, is a spinning wheel kick to the leg. And, at that time, there wasn't a lot of people doing that. I mean, but, Grandmaster Cho said, look, if you can do a round kick to the leg, or some people call it a cut kick, or, whatever, there's no reason you can't do a spinning heel kick to the leg.
Yeah.
And that I had some good success with that kick, throwing it, into the leg. But that was the transition, it moved from one to the other, and, just enjoy it.
Yeah. What changed for you? And it probably was a little bit of maturity. It probably was spending more time with Grandmaster Cho, but what changed from you, or what made you see that this was more than just a thing that males did? It was more than just fighting, and this was going to be something that you could influence thousands of people with as a martial artist.
I think, again, when I met Grandmaster Cho, I was 19 years old. So I went out to LA. I was a second degree black belt with Father Connolly in taekwondo, and then of course a black belt in Shorin-ryu. And I had Grandmaster Cho up for a seminar, and then he told me to come out and test for second degree under him. And when I went out there, even the testing process was completely different. We had to know theory. We had to know history. We had, philosophical questions that Grandmaster Cho and the board of masters were asking you. Grandmaster Cho would always have some different, Korean masters there, whether if it was Grandmaster Han from Hapkido, Grandmaster Chung Kim, another Hapkido master, or Grandmaster Tiger Yang. There was always these Korean masters up there, and they would ask you, how did Taekwondo influence your life, or what is what's your goals in Taekwondo? What's the responsibility of a rank? And prior to that, I never had any type of experience like that, and it started to make you reflect and say, wow, there's a lot more of this than kicking and punching.
Yeah.
And then, as you know, being master of AMA, Grandmaster Cho would always give these philosophical talks after the test, or after a class. He would give these little tidbits, and I start to see, wow, this is something much more than just physical. And I had a lot of friends in boxing, a lot of friends in some combat sports, and when they were done competing, it was over. Right. But I think the major turning point in me realizing the other benefits in Taekwondo was when I broke my neck. I used to work for the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette, and driving one night in the truck, and I got in a wreck, and I broke my neck, and I was put in a halo. They put 2 holes here, 2 holes in your back. I broke my arm. And now I'm thinking, wow, it's all over. Everything is done. Geez, I worked all these years, and I wanted to be, a champion or whatever. And Grandmaster Cho would call me every week. And every week, he would give me these, bits of encouragement, and he would say, persevere through it. This is, so one day I was feeling sorry for myself, and we were talking on the phone, and I'll be honest with you, I can't remember what I said, but it must have hit a nerve with him, because he said to me, stop. He says, you're a martial artist for a lifetime. You're a champion for a day. Now start putting the tenets of Taekwondo to work, and quit feeling sorry for yourself, and build off of what you've been taught. And that was I would say, if I had a major turning point in my life, with the exception of meeting Grandmaster Cho, that was it. Yeah. And you need that sometime as a student. You need that as a person. You need that as a friend. You need somebody sometime. I don't know if you call it tough love or whatever, but I think at that time I needed Grandmaster Cho to say to me, basically, don't feel sorry for yourself. There's people a lot worse than you. There's people that have been in accidents. And he said this to me, there's people who have been in accidents, been crippled. Yeah. You're not crippled. You could still walk. You could, you still have a lot of things. So be a martial artist. And that really transformed my thoughts on Taekwondo and my future and so forth.
Yeah. When I had your son Philip on the podcast, he or we were both talking about just how lucky he is, and Jimmy and all your students, but especially the boys, to have this access to a martial artist like you.
Appreciate it.
You have been the same with Grandmaster. So how does that, I know we could talk about this all day, but just a couple of examples of how lucky you've been to have an instructor such as Grandmaster Cho.
Well, you know, I think I've been really, really fortunate in my life, because I say I had the most positive influences. Number one was my father. My dad was my best friend, and my dad he was my idol. He was my mentor. My dad was the world to me. And my dad died really young. He died at 61. And Grandmaster Cho met my dad, and I learned so much from him that, you know, even today I'm 59. I'm going to be 60 years old, but there's not a day goes by I don't think of things that my dad said to me or taught me or whatever. And then Father Connolly. I mean, Father Connolly, you know, was such a positive influence in my life, and at a time where I really, you know, in the I don't want to say development years, but, you know, high school, and, you know, he married me and my wife. He baptized our kids. He's been a family friend, and then of course Grandmaster Cho has been just an unbelievable, you know, benefit of meeting him. But I think, and you know, and Grandmaster Darcy and me talk about this all the time. It's easy to say things, and it's easy to tell people to do things, but it's the way I think you learn. The best way you learn is from example, and you watch what somebody does, and you watch how somebody performs, or you watch how somebody acts, or you watch how somebody, you know, responds when there's problems and so forth. And I think that's why I'm so fortunate with Grandmaster Cho, because, you know, I'm blessed to be with him the longest, I think, of any student.
Yep.
I seen him, you know, years, you know, when I was 19. I don't know how old he would have been at that time, but he was, you know, just physically still unbelievable, the physical skills. But I always remember we would be in LA, and we would have the test on a Sunday, and the test would be, you know, really hard test. And we'd be out there, you know, and then he'd take everybody to dinner like he always does.
Yeah.
After dinner, you know, we would all go out, maybe whether we would go, you know, to, you know, just hang out. All the guys would go hang out, and we would, you know, and then on the way back, we would come past the Dojang, and there'd be the lights on. He'd be in there working out, you know, and I was like, you know, he just, all day we were there, and now he's back in there working out. I mean, you know, his example of the perseverance. I mean, you know, when he had the open heart surgery, when he had, you know, some injuries that he had, moving to different states and starting all over again. I mean, his perseverance, he personifies the, you know, the perseverance and indomitable spirit. And I just feel blessed, like, you know, God give me a blessing with them three men in my life that were so influential. You know, my dad, Father Connolly, and Grandmaster Cho. That, you know, I feel it's a responsibility to give it this, you know, to try to help other people with that. And not that I could be in their league, but what I could do is teach what they taught me to somebody else, and hopefully that'll influence their life in a positive direction, and help them like they helped me.
Yeah. Just when you mentioned Grandmaster with the open heart surgery, you'll remember this. We were in Arizona for summer camp 1 year after the open heart surgery, and it was just coincidence that Grandmaster Cho's seminar at the camp was 1 year from the surgery, and he would have been well into his 60s at this stage. And there's again, I have been blessed to train with some of the world's best martial artists, and it's no disrespect to anybody, and this is just my feeling, but nobody comes close. He just floats. And that was 1 year after
I know
everything he'd been through. It's quite phenomenal.
You know, I on my 6th degree test, we were in LA, and again, absolutely no disrespect to anyone else. Grandmaster Tiger Yang, who I have a tremendous amount of respect for, is a really good martial artist and a great person. When you're testing, you're fired up, and you want to perform your best, not only for yourself, but you want to perform your best for your instructor. Your instructor is up there, you're testing for high degree, 6th degree. And one of the questions that Grandmaster Tiger Yang asked me was, how do you compare your master to the other masters? And just, I don't know if I have Tourette's or what, but I just blurted out, there's no comparison. And I didn't mean that as an insult, but by no means, because I respect these gentlemen so much. But it was like, I've seen what this guy has done. I've seen what Grandmaster Joe's done over the years, and the dedication. And a lot of people don't know this. When he wrote Man of Contrast, you talking about years ago, every shot was one click.
Yep.
So it was one turn click. People don't realize that it wasn't like today where they had the cameras, and all the technology. And he actually took the pictures and was, taping them on paper to be progressive. And people don't realize the time and the dedication for that. And how strenuous that is. Grandmaster Darcy, who's like a brother to me, we always kid. We were shooting videotapes one time for one of the video series that we did, and of course, Grandmaster Cho is, start early, finish late. We were shooting 14 hours a day, and we were absolutely dead. I mean, there was a ton of us, and he was in every scene, and we were like, oh my God, how's he doing it? And we're a lot younger than him. And it's just his work ethic and his dedication to the art. It is something I've never seen on anybody in any field.
I know something. Excuse me. I know something that you talk about often, and I know you're passionate about this. Is the relationship between student and instructor, and also possibly how that's changed over the years. And obviously, you persevere to maintain what you see as the traditional or the right way. What's your thoughts on what
that's one thing that I think we lost over the years, and again, a lot of people take it out of context. Having respect and loyalty to an instructor, it's a two-way street. Grandmaster Cho did an article years ago called respect, you earn respect, to get respect, to earn respect. But a lot of, years ago, it was the master said it, or the sensei, or the sabunim, or kwajinim said it, the student did it without question. That was society at that time. I mean, that's how it was brought up. There was never no, question it or whatever. So again, I come up through that process. But as the martial arts evolved, and a lot of people start to open martial arts schools, and money start to get involved, and egos start to get involved, I think that the deterioration on both parts have been diminished. Where sometimes the master took advantage of the student, and then sometimes where the student just said, I don't need the master anymore, and that relationship has been severed. Again, I feel extremely fortunate that Grandmaster Cho always was the example on, don't do as I say, do as I do. This is what I'm doing. And if you want to be with me with it, you're with me with it. If you don't, God bless you. And you can go and do whatever you want if you have a different approach. But what I've seen is, especially over the years, and it's not to criticize anyone, but just from my personal view, a lot of people that leave their instructor, there's two reasons. One is money, and one is ego. And that's the two main reasons I think people leave their instructor, because they, again, Grandmaster Cho was asked one time, you're so innovative, and you incorporated boxing, you incorporated weightlifting, and all these different methods of teaching. Why don't you call it Cho's? Why didn't you name it after yourself or your own martial arts system? And he says, you don't change your family name. Your family name is your family name.
So,
What you do with the family name is to bring respect to that family name. And again, like I said, we're fortunate that Grandmaster chose the way he is, because there's been other masters, that you hear these horror stories that required their students to take mortgages out on their house to have a tournament, or that, they abused the student by, they're teaching every day, and so much is expected for them. And, Grandmaster Doug Cook, who I know you did an interview with, I have a tremendous amount of respect for him.
yes, sir.
Just emailed me a couple of weeks ago, and he wants me to do an article for his magazine, which is one of the best, I think, out there, about the relationship between an instructor. And I think we have to look at, and I'm hoping to convey this in the article, is that we have to look at both sides. We have to look at the responsibility of an instructor or a master and the responsibility of a student. And respect goes two ways. We've been fortunate, that we don't have a master or instructor that takes advantage of us. But a martial art master isn't a coach. And it's not taking anything away from coaches, because there's some phenomenal coaches that have a lot of positive influence on people's lives. But a martial arts master is like a second father, and the only difference, I say, it takes years to get that relationship from both when somebody walks in my school and the Dojang and they join, I want to give them everything. Mm-hmm. They're not going to feel like they're part of, I don't want to say my family, until they show me the dedication and they show me the years of loyalty and so forth to both, not only the school, but to taekwondo.
Yeah. I think it's a reflection on a lot of modern society as well, because when a student comes to my school, I can't help but just become committed and passionate about their progress, and I'm all in. But a lot of people just see it as like a daycare, or they drop the kids off, or even they attend just as a pastime. And there has to be a place for those people. There absolutely does. But I think I mentioned this on the last podcast that I recorded as well. People don't realize often just how invested you become in your students. And sometimes you get that back, and sometimes you don't. And maybe that's a benefit to the people that do stay, or you do bond, or you have that relationship with. I don't know. Maybe we are just lucky with some people and we're not with others. Yeah. I don't know.
And I think too, Tate, because there's so much information out there, and today, before it was the movies, when Bruce Lee come out, we were doing it before Bruce Lee come out, but it was like the Bruce Lee era, then it was the Kung Fu era, then it was the Ninja era, and but you didn't have the internet. Now today, somebody punches in martial arts, there's thousands of Google searches that comes up, even hundreds of schools, and people come in today with a preconceptive idea. Yeah. And the UFC, it's a great spectator sport, but the UFC type of training isn't for everyone. I mean, a lot of people think that's for everyone. Yeah. And what did Mike Tyson say? Everybody got a plan till they get punched in the face. I mean, the truer words have never been spoken. A lot of people think, this is something I could do. And today, a lot of it, when it comes to martial arts, and again, it's not a criticism, it's just what people are interested in. Somebody may say, Philip, my son has a phenomenal program with the Fit to Fight. Yeah. It's an exercise class. It's a great, phenomenal class that they use martial art techniques, but it's not martial arts. Yeah. And it's no disrespect to my son. My son is phenomenal. He's a great martial artist, does a phenomenal job, but that is not a martial arts class. Taibo, I know Billy Blanks. We competed against each other one time years ago, and he's a phenomenal martial artist. But Taibo is not a martial art; it's an exercise class. MMA is a great self-defense. It's a great fighting form. It's a good spectator sport if you like that. Yep. But it's not a martial art. A martial art is to empower people's lives. Grandmaster Leo Fong, another guy that I have so much respect for, always said that martial arts should be a positive metaphor for the way you live your life. And if it's only directed towards sport or towards fitness, it has none of the other benefits.
Yeah.
So that's where I think we have to.
I think we can definitely put that change into the positive category.
Mhm.
What's in the negative category? What isn't the same anymore? Where have we went wrong? I know there's lots of things we could talk about where we went right, and martial arts has changed. But what do you not like about modern day martial arts?
I don't like as far as the competition goes. Again, and I don't follow it nowhere near as I did. I mean, you were at my house and you've seen my library. I mean, years ago, I used to follow it. I could go in and tell you everything about every competitor, but it seemed there was a more, Benny Urquidez, who's probably one of the greatest, if not the greatest kickboxer and martial artist ever. He's phenomenal. He refers to it as bushido and the code of ethics in it. And I don't believe we have that anymore like we did before. You don't have that bushido spirit or harangdo spirit, which would be the Korean counterpart to that. There's so many martial artists that I've had the fortune of training with or even competing against or seeing them compete. Sheehan Marty Manuel. I know I talked about him a lot. He's a legend. I mean, there's a guy that I can't say enough about. Confined to a wheelchair, was the number one contender in kickboxing, and taught for I don't know how many years, but for years, and produced phenomenal students. Even to this day, his students are still teaching and do an outstanding job. We keep in touch over Facebook, but they have that, whether you call it bushido spirit or whatever it is, but they have it. It's become a thing of the past where people don't have that anymore. I don't see that being taught. I don't see people focusing on that. I think people focus more on, the microwave approach. Let's put it in the microwave, push 2 minutes, and it's done.
Yeah,
you can't do martial arts that way.
Just when you talk about the library in your house and just how many thousands of magazines and stuff is it? But do you think you were born for this, or was there something that really ignited the passion? Because I don't know anybody who has such a memory or such a way of, even when I'm in your class, for example, there's just a catalogue within your head of different drills and styles and techniques. And if someone asks a question, you've got 5 different ways of answering it, depending on what's happening. Is that just natural, or is that something that...
Well, I think a little, I have a good memory, so I don't credit my parents or whatever, the gift that is. But what I always did, whatever class I went to, whether it was Grandmaster Cho's class, whether it was training with, Grandmaster Darcy or anybody, where I see something, I would go make notes of it and say, okay, this is what they were doing. Or I see a magazine article. I mean, I have a big martial arts library, and I would look at that and I would say, okay, how can I apply this to make my teaching stronger or my technique stronger or whatever? And I think the experience of teaching, I've been in martial arts since, again, I'm 8 years old, and I'm 59. I think over and over teaching, I think that's a thing that a lot of people don't realize is to teach is to learn. And when an instructor requires a student to teach, I tell my black belt this: I'm requiring you to teach because it's going to improve you learning.
Yeah.
And that's an important part, because I've learned so much from teaching. I love to read. Me and you have talked about it before. So I've been fortunate that I've read a lot, and I try to apply, the positive things that I've read from it. But I think, of course, naturally I can remember things. I got a good memory, but I think you have to study it and then apply it.
I think one of the areas where we as AMA members are so lucky is Grandmaster chose open-mindedness, and I can't understand why everybody isn't the same, in that we have our base, but then we take from whatever works, whatever we can add, we add. And you, within our own association, have been at the forefront of that. Can we talk a wee bit about the benefits of cross training and the benefits of taking things from other arts or other fighters or martial artists and adding it? Because so many people are ITF practitioners, for example. Many of them will say, you said at the beginning, it's general choice way, and that's it.
Yeah,
there's nothing else in martial arts other than that. But it's not just taekwondo, it could be kung fu, Brazilian jiu-jitsu, and they won't incorporate anything else. But as I say, you've been the front runner within AMA forever I can remember, of bringing as much in as you can.
Well, and again, I think, as being a technical director, it goes back to incorporating the grappling. When it's way before MMA, it was the no hold bar and coming out, and they were doing these matches in Japan under the UWF, which was United Wrestling Federation. Some of it was like wrestling, like studio wrestling, but then they took it to another level. Pancrase come out, and it was real fighting, but so forth. And I met a guy, Bart Vell, who was a really good, strong, big guy, Kempo black belt. And he introduced me to the grappling. And I really thank Bart for doing what he did with that. We used to have him up for a ton of seminars and so forth. But at that time, again, Grandmaster Cho says, with the evolution of the martial arts, and I was still competing then, and I thought I was going to compete in this no hold bars. There was a whole big thing with that to come out, and I was going to compete in that. And Grandmaster Cho said, in order to compete in that, just like kickboxing, you can't kickbox if you don't know how to box.
Yep.
Well, I remember my first, one of my first kickboxing fights. My dad was a professional boxer, so he taught me how to box. And the guy that I fought had no boxing experience whatsoever, and I did really well against him, and I dominated the whole fight because his hands were, the hands were down, the hands weren't up like you're fighting.
Yep.
I remember getting out of the ring, and my head was this big, and I thought, wow, man, am I great? My dad said to me, "Don't think you were so good. He was so bad." He says, "But if you didn't know how to box, you couldn't kickbox. If you're going to go into MMA or no holds bar and you don't know how to grapple, you're not going to have any success with it, because whether you're the best kicker or puncher in the world, or whether you're the best grappler in the world, it's been proven over and over again that there's no superior. You have to be, as great as the Gracies are. They've learned how to punch. They've learned how to defend the punch. They learn how to kick. So you had to be open-minded with that. Some people think that it's, whatever I do is the right way, and there's no way, and you're never going to change some people. I always compare it to politics. If a guy's a certain party, I don't know in Europe, but if a guy's a certain party in the United States, it's very hard to convince him to have an open mind and say, well, let me look, and maybe they have some good ideas over here, and maybe they have some good ideas over here, and we can maybe, get together on it. But, again, I think it's, the benefit of having somebody like Grandmaster Cho that says, I don't have all the answers. Taekwondo has no grappling. Learn how to grapple, and then bring it into our system. And not try to make our Taekwondo people champion grapplers, but show them something that opens up their mind. If they get caught in a situation where they needed grappling, they have it. I mean, I always say, the most beautiful tree is not the one with twigs on it. It's the one with the biggest branches and or the biggest, leaves. That's the beauty of the tree. And that's what it is. You got the strong base, then you just branch out. Do you forget the base? No, the base is the base. The patterns are the patterns, the formal techniques are the formal techniques, and then you just build off of it. And this is something I always say, Grandmaster Darcy is the closest instructor, I think, to Grandmaster Cho teaching style. You are phenomenal with when I watched you do the kids program. So I learned a lot by watching you do the kids program. Master Burns. I mean, you know as well as I know, one step sparring.
Yeah.
We have so many people. When we go to a summer camp, we had the summer camps, or we have international testing, and we're there that week. I mean, it's collage. Paul Healy, you guys are there. Everybody's given their specialties. And you can learn so much from it. And then even if I can't, the aerial kicks, I was never good with the aerial kicks. I mean, I got these big, thick hips and thick legs, so my legs don't come off the ground. But I watch it and I say, okay, I may not be able to perform it, but I can watch it and learn the tips to teach one of my students how to perform that, or coach them on how to perform it, or give them encouragement on how to perform it. But I think if you have a closed mind, there's no room for growth.
Yep.
And, that's without growth, you stay stagnant.
Just when you mentioned Hawaii there, I always forget that last year, 2020, was just, it was a write-off.
2020, yeah.
I always think, it was last year, but it was actually almost 2 years ago now when we were in Hawaii. And again, different people have different opinions, but I was there for your test, your physical test to 9th degree, and Grandmaster Darcy's physical test to 8th degree. And that's something that's quite rare. And I don't want to have a conversation about what's right and what's wrong, because everybody's way, I respect their way, but let's have a discussion on the benefits you see of AMA testing, us in our association testing all the way up to 9th degree, because that's very, very rare nowadays that someone stands in the floor.
Yeah.
Like you.
Well, nobody was more shocked than me. As a matter of fact, I'll give you a little funny story here. I found out about the 9th degree. When I tested for 8th degree, I says, thank God I made it to 8th degree black belt. It's great. It's over. I don't, and you don't have that stress anymore of testing. But, my 8th degree test was an actual test. I mean, we went out there and we tested, we did everything with the exception of sparring, because sparring, you can never win. And what I mean by that is if you're sparring someone and you don't dominate them, then it's all, he's an 8th degree. And, but if you dominate him, he's a bully and he picked on me. So Grandmaster said, we're not going to spar during the test. So, you sparred enough. We've seen you spar. So just do the drill, line drills, do self-defense and so forth. My 9th degree, Grandmaster Cho, and the protocol, we never asked the test.
Yeah.
That's something that's just, in our association that we feel the master instructor or the Grandmaster instructor should ask the student to test. So Grandmaster Cho was talking to my wife and he says, I'd like for you to test for 6th degree, my wife, Jeannie, and that's master's rank. And we were elated, wow, Grand, my wife's going to be a master, AMA, great. That's just great. And he said, I want Philip to do a demonstration that day for 9th degree. And I was like, oh God, he says it, we got to do it. And I don't think it was so much of a test. I just think he had Grandmaster Darcy me up there. It was very short, but just to show that, look, you have to come up here. You're requiring the students to do it. You should be able to lead by example and perform. Yeah. I think that's important because, you have that open. There's nothing to hide. I mean, am I going to perform like I did when I was in my 20s? Absolutely not. Am I going to perform, as somebody else in their 20s? No. But you show, you go up there and you're like everybody else and you do what you have to do. And I think a lot of it at that stage, especially I knowing Master Cho, like I know, Grandmaster Cho, I think he's setting it up for the future. And he's saying, look, realistically, we want to keep the thing in place. And this is what, we're going to need a high grade there so we can test people up to that grade. I feel honored. I don't think any of us ever feel deserving of the rank, and that's something that is
No.
every rank that I tested for. You always feel like you're not deserving of that rank. You think, yeah, you know what? There's people that are better than me. But again, I don't think, and again, being an instructor, I think we have to say, okay, am I better today than I was when I tested for 7th degree or 8th degree? Am I doing more? Am I contributing to the art? Am I doing something that constitutes that? And I think that's important. Physically, you're only going to go so far. Grandmaster Cho, as well as I know, and everybody else that sees him is like, he's a freak of nature. I mean, look at him at 80 years, he's going to be 81 years old,
Yeah.
and he's still physically unbelievable. But if you can't compare Grandmaster Cho today to Grandmaster Cho 30 years ago.
Yeah.
30 years ago, physically, he was, they're second to none. But 30 years ago, Grandmaster Cho wasn't the Grandmaster Cho he is today.
Yeah.
You understand what I'm saying?
Yeah, of course.
And it's pros and cons. I mean, it's you wish you had both, but you don't.
I think, or I don't know if you and Grandmaster Darcy realise the effect that had and has on people like me or any of the other sort of higher grades. That leading by example, which we get obviously from Grandmaster Cho, but you're calling it a demo. But to me and to the rest of the instructors and students, you tested because the pressure that you must feel. I'll give you an example. On the day of the test, yourself and Grandmaster Darcy were first. So you went up on the floor first.
Mm-hmm.
And I was sitting at the back watching, and I thought, this is brilliant. Grandmaster Cho's going to go 9th degree, 8th degree, 6th degree, and that means I can get the test out of the room. So this is what I'm thinking. Yeah. Flip it round. So you and Grandmaster Darcy tested, and then he went all the way back down to the red uniforms, and I was like, oh no. So I had to sit for an hour, 2.5 hours, or however long it was. That was pressure. So if I felt pressure in front of my students, you must have felt pressure, and that was impressive to see your leader up there doing his stuff.
That Grandmaster Darcy and me were in the back, and we were getting dressed in the side room next to Grandmaster's office, and we looked at each other, and we didn't even have to say anything. We knew what both of us was thinking, like, oh my God, you know what I mean? Look, our egos, I think, are intact, but we want to look good, not only for Grandmaster Cho, but for you guys to say, look, this is, this is what we want to be an example for you guys. And it's hard. It's a lot of pressure, but I mean, they say with great reward comes great sacrifice, or however it goes. But, here's what I really enjoy. I always say it's like a family reunion. We all get together. And we all go to AMA headquarters. It's like we're all back together. The summer camps, I'm hoping that we can get some things started again.
Yeah.
The pandemic. I mean, it is, I know everybody has been really, it's been a trying time. I know a lot of schools had to shut down, unfortunately, but I'm hoping that things, can get back to normal and we can start doing some summer camps and getting back together. I miss you. I miss everybody. I miss Grandmaster Darcy. I haven't seen him. I haven't seen Master Burns. Grandmaster. We all keep in contact, but it's not the same as seeing each other. I mean, you know what it is like when we're all there. It's a big party.
Oh yeah. I know I don't have you for too much longer, and I don't want to hold you back. One question that's just popped into my head there when we're talking about the pandemic. What did it teach you as a martial artist? It certainly taught me patience, for example, and even as a grandmaster, what did you learn from what we've went through over the last year?
I think that the biggest thing was, that how fragile we are. That something like that can shut the world down. You know, our parents, you know, my parents, my father went through the depression, and you always hear stories about depression, and not comparing the pandemic to the depression, but I think it was a time in history that you know it's never happened before, and I remember, you know, just like, oh my God, you know, not only the world has stopped, you know
Yeah.
what I mean, and the uncertainty and the fear and the anxiety of the uncertainty is, you know, my biggest fear was, you know, there's no one in the world I love more than my grandkids. And my biggest fear, I had COVID, and thank God it wasn't bad, but I didn't want to give it to anybody, especially my grandkids.
Yeah.
And it was just like, oh my God, you know, how fragile life is and how to appreciate life. And I read a good book a while back, and it says every day when you wake up, say to yourself 5 things that you're thankful for. You know, whether it's your wife, your kids, your grandkids, but change it every day. Don't say the same thing every day. And, you know, during the pandemic, if you say, I'm glad that I don't have the, you know, COVID today, or anybody in my family doesn't have COVID, or any of my friends doesn't have COVID. I'm glad that I could walk in my neighborhood today. You know, little things like that that we would take for granted a million times and never think twice about it.
Yeah.
I think it, you know, really sets you back and says, hey, you know what? And then, you know, my mother-in-law, uh, God love her, she's not in her 90s. She's in a nursing home, and we couldn't see her for a long time.
Yeah.
And, yeah, on my wife, the effect it had on my wife. Father Connolly was in a nursing home, and we couldn't see him. And then seeing how, and God, my mother-in-law is still living, but seeing how mentally they were deteriorating because of no stimulation. It was horrible, but you learn from it, and I'm a big believer in anything negative, there comes a positive.
Yeah.
And I think the positive for me was appreciating things that I took for granted. You know, one of the things I took for granted every day was I'm done at work, I go teach at my taekwondo school.
Yep.
We go to the taekwondo dojang, and it's empty. There's no students there. You know what I mean? And then you know, having classes in the park. That's where I started. I start teaching in a park, in Memorial Park in New Kensington. I would have to go down there and just start working out, and somebody would say, hey, what are you doing? Oh, I'm doing taekwondo. What's that? Oh, take a class. And then going back to that, it was a, you know, kind of neat, actually, in a way.
Yep.
But thank God, you know, we made it through. You know, we're all fully vaccinated. And my dojang, when we stopped, we had about 193 students when we had to shut down, and then we opened back up, and then government mandated we shut down. So we were shut down about a total of 9 months.
Yep.
When we reopened, we were fortunate to come back with about 70 some students,
Yep.
and it's really growing. I mean, a lot of, you know, a lot of people are coming back, and a lot of people are, you know, I think people were so messed up about being cooped up that they're running to do something.
Yep.
Well, the enrollment has been good. Again, I feel for all the people that, depending on martial arts for livelihood, had to close and find something else.
Yep. Yep. I don't want to end on a negative thing like COVID and the pandemic, so let's end on a positive. 2 things very quickly. What's your greatest martial arts memory, perhaps with Grandmaster Cho? And if you could just give us a wee, okay, let me very quickly say this. Like Grandmaster Cho, like Grandmaster Darcy, and yourself, there's a famous saying that you don't always remember what people say, but you always remember how they made you feel. Mm-hmm. So even I remember when we were talking in Hawaii in Grandmaster Cho's back office about putting an article together for Grandmaster Cook's magazine. I can't remember everything we said that night, but when I think back, I still remember that you, like the other Grandmasters, have this positive aura. You just have this positivity. So I left that evening on cloud 9. So if you can first of all give us your favourite memory, and then if we can close the episode with just a positive message for everyone to go into the future with.
I think one of the most positive memories was training individually with Grandmaster Cho. Whether it was, years ago, I went to Europe with him, and we traveled all over the place doing seminars, and I helped him during the seminars. And again, we would do a seminar, 3 hours, break, 2-3 hours. And then we would go back to the hotel and just me and him, and he'd say, let's go work patterns, or let's go work yawns. And just me and him. Another time we were all on vacation, Grandmaster Cho, my family, Grandmaster Cho's family, and Grandmaster Darcy. And working out with the three of us, just the three of us is phenomenal. As well as I know, going in the back room and lifting weights when Grandmaster Cho's back there hitting the weights. I think it was and there's been so many other than that. There's the competition. I really liked a lot of the competition. The meeting certain people. The Wesley Snipes thing was like dying and going to martial arts heaven. I mean, there's so many famous martial art masters there and champions. But I think the biggest thing would be training individually with Grandmaster Cho or Master Darcy and myself, or you guys, some of the other AMA members. And I think on the leave on a positive note, what I think we have to do is always just enjoy the process. Grandmaster Cho always talked about progression. You start as a white belt, and there's certain requirements that you have. Then it's a yellow belt. Then there's certain requirements you have as you go up the belt levels. But I think even though you have the goal of supposedly reaching a black belt, enjoy the process up and have patience. And that's something that everybody has to, me more than anybody, has to work on the patience on achieving the goal. But enjoy the actual process. Enjoy coming to class. Yeah. Enjoy coming to a seminar. Be open-minded. And, again, I think, the Machados, famous jiu-jitsu family, has a sign in their school, leave your ego at the door. I think that's one of the most profound things that we can do. Is just leave your ego at the door. Enjoy the process. Have fun. Don't compare yourself to other people. I mean, and let everybody do what they want. There's people that, has left our organization. God bless you. Do whatever you want. That's your business. Live and let live, and enjoy it and improve. Remember, best revenge is success.
Indeed, sir. Okay, I know just how busy and crazy your life can be, Grandmaster Ameris. So I can't thank you enough for making the time for us. That is just shy of an hour. It just goes so quickly. Okay. But listen, I can't thank you enough. This is going to be episode 50. So it was a little anniversary. I've kind of timed the episode so I could have you on for episode 50. So I can't thank you enough.
We got to get Grandmaster Darcy on there. We got to tell him, he how he is. He's Mr. No. We got to get you. So I'm challenging Grandmaster Darcy. Get on this podcast. Let people hear from you. Let Master Burns get on this podcast. It's a great vehicle. And we can all learn from it and all benefit from it. So, and I want to thank you. You're doing a phenomenal job. You're such a great representation, and give Tracy and everybody my best in Scotland. And I hope to see you guys soon, whether it's here or there.
We'll be in Pittsburgh, sir. Please, God.
Yeah, my Dojang is always open. My doors are always open. And you guys are AIMA family, so come on up.
Perfect. Okay, sir. Have a brilliant day. God bless you. Bye-bye. Take care. Bye-bye. Bye-bye.